The G7 Leaders Summit concluded in Hiroshima, Japan on May 21st. Drawing significant attention from the global community, the summit, for the first time, had economic security as its main focus. During the preceding meetings of G7 finance and foreign ministers, key discussions centered around reorganizing supply chains and addressing economic coercions perceived as directed towards the Chinese Communist Party. The subsequent series of actions taken by various parties have reignited the already long-standing U.S China technology war. The focus of this war has once again intensified around high-end chips. On the same day, China claimed that Micron, a U.S semiconductor manufacturer, failed to pass a cybersecurity review. As a result, operators of critical information infrastructure within China were instructed to cease procurement of Micron's products. This move was viewed as China leveraging its market advantage to retaliate against the US. On May 23rd, Japan, as the host nation of the G7 summit, officially introduced export control measures for the semiconductor manufacturing equipment, adding 23 categories of advanced semiconductor manufacturing equipment to the list of regulated export items. The measures are set to be implemented on July 23. Data from VLSI research reveals that around 30% of the global semiconductor manufacturing equipment comes from Japanese companies. The 23 categories of export-controlled equipment covers various stages of semiconductor manufacturing, such as cleaning, film formation, photolithography, etching, and inspection. This includes manufacturing equipment related to extreme ultraviolet EUV products and etching equipment capable of vertically stacking storage elements, all of which pertain to cutting-edge semiconductor manufacturing equipment of 10-14 nanometers and below. Although Japan's revised restrictions do not explicitly target China or any other specific countries, export of these 23 categories to any countries apart from the 42 friendly nations and regions requires separate approval, effectively halting exports to China. Japan's move was part of a classified semiconductor agreement reached in Washington on January 27 between the U.S., Japan, and the Netherlands, aiming to expand semiconductor export control measures against the CCP. As early as March 8 of this year, reports indicated that a major Japanese photoresist manufacturer had implemented the U.S. Entity List restrictions, cutting off supplies of KrF photoresist to a memory wafer factory in mainland China. Photoresist is a core material in the semiconductor photolithography process, determining the precision and yield of semiconductor patterning. Currently, Japan dominates the global photoresist market. Moreover, the shelf life of photoresist is only 6 months, making it impossible to stockpile. The Netherlands also announced on March 8 that it would introduce new export restrictions on semiconductor chip technologies before the summer, extending from the most advanced extreme ultraviolet EUV lithography machines to the less advanced deep ultraviolet DUV lithography machines. The sale of the EUV lithography machines to China has been banned since 2019. Lithography machines are the core equipment for chip manufacturing, controlled primarily by the Dutch company ASML. Several industry experts have noted that if China wishes to develop its own chip industry without the advanced technology of ASML, it will face insurmountable obstacles. In addition, on May 31st, the Dutch government announced it would investigate a Chinese-owned Xperia acquisition of a local semiconductor manufacturer, Naui. This new legislation, effective as of June 1st, is known as the Act on Security Screening of Investments, Merger and Acquisitions, VFO Act. Under this law, the Dutch government can limit investment volumes or block acquisition based on national security considerations. The law will backdate to acquisitions that have occurred since September 2020. Records show that Naui, established in 2016, primarily produces energy harvesting power management chips. These chips can effectively manage the faint energy collected from the environment, providing energy support for scenarios such as Internet of Things sensors, electronic tags, and smart bracelets. In November last year, Naui was acquired by Nexperia located in Nijmegen, which itself was sold to Chinese firm Wintech Technology in 2018. Wintech Technology took control of Nexperia by integrating a large number of its shares. However, because the acquisition time exceeds the retroactive period covered by the law, the Dutch government cannot investigate Wintech's acquisition of Nexperia. Nexperia, formerly the standard product division of NXP in the Netherlands, has over 60 years of professional experience in the semiconductor industry. In addition to the classified agreement reached with Japan and the Netherlands, the United States also proposed in March last year the Chip 4 alliance, including the U.S, Japan, Taiwan, and South Korea. On August 8 of last year, South Korea agreed to participate in preliminary discussions marking the official formation of the Chip 4 alliance. The external community believes that the underlying intention of Chip 4 is to leverage the alliance to exclude mainland China from the global semiconductor supply chain. Data shows that following South Korea's inclusion in the Chip 4 alliance, its semiconductor exports to China plummeted dramatically. Moreover, according to the reports from the Financial Times on April 23rd, the White House has asked the South Korean government to urge South Korean chip manufacturers not to fill any gaps in the Chinese chip market following China's ban on the sale of U.S Micron chips in the country. Notably, on the eve of the G7 summit, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida met with the semiconductor giants of the United States, Taiwan, and South Korea, including Intel, TSMC, Samsung, and Micron Technology. Representatives from the Belgium-based Semiconductor Research Center, IMEC, Applied Materials, and IBM also attended the meeting. Kishida personally encouraged these companies to invest in Japan, noting the crucial importance of addressing the global issue of supply chain stability. Participants in the meeting announced new plans to expand their operations in Japan. Turning to Taiwan, another member of the Chip 4, from May 22 to 25, Taiwan's Ministry of Justice Investigation Bureau carried out simultaneous raids on 8 mainland China-funded enterprises in Taiwan, mobilizing hundreds of personnel to prevent headhunting of Taiwanese high-tech talents. As a hub of the semiconductor industry, Taiwan controls 48% of the global wafer manufacturing capacity. TSMC alone accounts for 92% of the production capacity for the world's most advanced semiconductors. Therefore, Taiwan is also a hub for semiconductor technology and talent. In recent years, with the deepening of the U.S China tech war, Chinese President Xi Jinping has committed to achieving self-sufficiency in high-tech chips, and stealing Taiwan's semiconductor technology and headhunting high-tech talent have become the main means for the CCP to develop its semiconductor industry. For instance, one of the founders of China's largest integrated circuit manufacturing company, SMIC, is Zhang Ruijing, who once worked at the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. In addition, former TSMC co-CEO Jiang Shangyi and several other top semiconductor technicians from Taiwan hold executive positions in SMIC. In early April, a high-ranking official from Taiwan's Ministry of Justice Investigation Bureau revealed that they had begun investigating about 100 Chinese companies. Since the beginning of last year, 7 companies have been prosecuted and 27 companies have been searched or asked for interviews. In one ongoing case, a mainland Chinese company claimed to be a Taiwanese data analysis company, but it was actually a branch of a Shanghai chip factory responsible for transmitting chip design diagrams back to China. Chinese companies often use various tactics to operate in Taiwan, including disguising themselves as overseas Chinese or foreign capital to set up branches or offices in Taiwan, establishing personal studios, or registering companies in tax havens like the Cayman Islands, making cash flows from China difficult to trace. The Taiwanese government is committed to increasing penalties for illegal headhunting, with the maximum sentence expected to rise from 1 year to 3, and fines escalating from 5,200 to 520,525. The authorities are also considering revising the law to include the leakage of core chip technology as a violation of national security. However, the most comprehensive blockade against China's acquisition of high-end chip technology is led by the United States. Firstly, on August 9 last year, President Biden officially signed the CHIPS and Science Act of 2022. According to this act, the United States will allocate $280 billion to boost its own chip research and development and manufacturing capabilities. Simultaneously, it seeks to further curb China's advances in this field, such as prohibiting entities receiving funding from the CHIPS Act from participating in any significant transactions in China, including substantially expanding semiconductor manufacturing capabilities there. This prohibition will last for 10 years. On October 7, 2022, the U.S. government introduced new regulations on chip exportation to China. The ban on the export of high-end chips and manufacturing equipment previously applicable to those below 10 nm was extended to include those below 14 nm. This also includes high-performance chips related to AI and supercomputers, as well as products such as those NAND flash memory with more than 128 layers. The U.S. government also prohibited U.S. tech talent, including U.S. citizens, green card holders, and legal entities established under U.S. law, from assisting China in developing or manufacturing high-end chips without U.S. permission. Some analysts say that the upgraded U.S. restrictions on China's chip industry amount to pushing China into a desperate situation from areas of sales, manufacturing, technology, and talent. They argue that the U.S. blockade of China's semiconductor industry has extended from singular sanction against Huawei to a single-line chokehold involving military high-end chip and now to a comprehensive ban. The Financial Times even described the U.S. intention to push China's semiconductor industry back to the Stone Age. The U.S. is also working closely with its close allies and partners to contain the CCP comprehensively. This includes forming the U.S., Japan, South Korea, Taiwan Chip 4 Alliance, which was previously discussed, as well as promoting U.S., Japan, Netherlands cooperation in regulating the export of chip manufacturing equipment. The Biden administration is continuously active in implementing the CHIPS Act and the new export control regulations. On December 15, 2022, Biden added chip manufacturer Yangtze Memory and 21 other major Chinese artificial intelligence chip companies to the trade blacklist. On January 17 of this year, Biden announced that the chip export control measures introduced last October for mainland China also apply to Macau. U.S. companies now need a permit to export to Macau. On February 28, the U.S. Department of Commerce announced a new rule. Semiconductor companies receiving U.S. federal funding will be restricted from expanding their capacity in countries like China for the next 10 years. Public information shows that TSMC has 16 nm and 28 nm wafer fabs in Nanjing. Samsung has a flash memory chip factory in Xi'an, and SK Hynix has chip factories in Wuxi and Dalian. These companies may be interested in building factories in the U.S. and receiving subsidies provided by the U.S. government, which will inevitably affect their chip production and sales in China. Furthermore, the Wall Street Journal reported on March 2 that the Biden administration is considering revoking export licenses to Huawei, including products using advanced 5G technology and older 4G technology. This implies that not only is Huawei's 5G technology being cut off, but even its 4G products are now being restricted. In recent years, amidst the backdrop of the U.S.-China tech war, China has been striving to develop its own chip industry. Over the past few decades, the Chinese government has initiated several chip manufacturing plans attempting to achieve breakthroughs in key technologies through substantial financial investment. However, one after another, these so-called chip companies went bankrupt after exhausting state subsidies, leaving their projects unfinished. Now, the tight blockade on chips constructed by the U.S. and its allies has cut off the path for Chinese companies to acquire high-end technology, undoubtedly heavily impacting China's chip research capabilities. SMIC, which the CCP takes great pride in, has reportedly removed the 14 nm process from its official website and is no longer accepting related orders only being able to process chips of 28 nm and above. On May 12, Opel announced the closure of its chip design company, Zeku, and dissolved its chip project division. Zeku, which had received an investment of 50 billion yuan, more than 3,000 master's and doctoral graduates from top university at home and abroad were laid off. And these impacts will continue to transmit downstream along the industrial chain. International competitiveness of Chinese mobile phone companies will decrease, such as Huawei having to withdraw from the international market. Meanwhile, new energy vehicles are becoming China's most promising pillar industry. Compared to traditional fuel vehicles, new energy vehicles have a greater demand and dependence on chips. Chinese automakers' research into autonomous driving technology requires even higher performance chips. At present, global autonomous driving chips are basically monopolized by NVIDIA and Qualcomm. Additionally, the field of artificial intelligence, AI, which the CCP prides itself on due to its vast amount of data, with some even saying it has surpassed the U.S., requires the support of high-end chips with powerful computing capabilities. Once China loses the opportunity to acquire high-end chips, the prospects of these industries are not optimistic. Therefore, even with the support of the entire country system, Xi Jinping's dream of chip dominance and a powerful nation are likely to be shattered.